Hello and welcome to The Wire. As the Supreme Court continues to hear the petition against the hijab ban in Karnataka, today at The Wire we're having an important conversation with the researchers from the People's Union of Civil Liberties in Karnataka. PUCL researchers recently carried out a study where they went to the different districts of the state to understand and sort of unpack the impact, the real reality on the ground of the hijab ban, and also to ask the students, the female students, Muslim students, about their everyday lives and how they have completely transformed since the ban sort of came into effect. And we will be discussing larger policy implications, the larger context of how this has altered education in India, especially for the young Muslim women. So, my first question to you all would be about the study. I mean, of course, we've been following it in the news and we've seen fragmented instances where a lot of students have been affected, Muslim women have been affected across the board. But what was it that has been the most striking in terms of the research and in terms of the interactions that you all have had with the students, with the women? And we'd want you to sort of reflect on that and give us the most insightful things that are happening on the ground and what is currently happening on the ground.
What we knew before we started the study was through some organizations who are working already with Muslim women, either Muslim-run civil society organizations or informal groups. We knew that there were dropouts, and we knew that there were these kind of numbers that are not getting out into the news. And we knew that there are some kind of definitely shift. There's a shift in the classroom, but we did not anticipate the extent and the gravity of the situation until we went and started talking to the girls. So there are multiple things that I want to bring out here. The first thing is the psychological distress that has been caused. Um, from the moment it started in Udupi, and the videos have been circulating, social media posts and videos of not just Udupi but saffron scarves, boys, young boys wearing saffron scarves across the state in many parts of the state. These videos started going into every nook and corner. So whether it's happening in my college or not, I know that Muslims out there are going to face this, and they're constantly warning me. While I'm facing this, another thing is faculty and principals and administration starts treating me differently, and police gets involved. This kind of distress itself was enough for a lot of Muslim girls to feel threatened and start talking to their parents about not going to college anymore or dropping out. But even more than this, there have been several instances where girls have shared incidents where, the hijab has been violently removed, forcibly removed from their head, either from an invigilator or from a teacher. And the kind of sudden change of from how faculty, principals have been viewing Muslim girls to how they view them, how they started viewing them in December, January. This sudden change where they spoke with a tone of utter disrespect and utter hatred, they could see it, they could sense it, and they were extremely shocked. So this sense of shock and this distress, many Muslim students chose to drop out because there is no option, because they can't choose between hijab and education. And this for being forced to make this choice itself caused a lot of students distress, because this is not a choice that a young Muslim woman should be making. So this kind of psychological distress was something that I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
If I may add a couple of things.
Sure.
So one of the other primary motivations, I would say, for the study to have been taken up is that when the issue became big in the media and the students went to court initially in January, February, there were some civil society organizations in Bangalore that had tried to do solidarity visits to some parts of the state. And those visits were actually extremely revelatory in that while there were some of the girls who were out there in the public speaking and sharing with the media their distress in the society, within college campuses, etc., there were a huge number of women to whom nobody was speaking. And that made them feel even more isolated. And in many senses, even now, we in this study, we've touched on a few districts and a few institutions, and that's still a very minuscule population in comparison to the number of Muslim students, both girls and boys, if I may add, who've been affected by this, by this entire issue. And that's just a few districts. And in many senses, back then in February, also these civil society organizations felt like we as a society had failed these women because nobody was speaking to them, their friends were not speaking to them, their neighbors were not speaking to them. And even now, a lot of these women are just waiting for someone to go to them and say, what happened? Tell us how you're doing. And that gap is one of the more important things that we wanted to fill in. Besides, of course, the question of bringing these testimonies to the fore and making sure that the voices of these girls are heard, it was also an attempt by us to perform our duty as citizens of this society, that you stand by your fellow Indians when their constitutional rights are being ripped apart in a very concerted way using the state machinery.
Absolutely. Now, if I may, if you can tell me about the districts that you went to and the kind of numbers, if there are any numbers in terms of the dropout rates or in terms of the students, like an approximate number of students you think have been affected, if you could discuss that part of it, just the magnitude of the effect that has happened.
Yeah, so we have actually visited majorly 3 districts. Dakshin Kannada, Raichur, and also even in Dakshin Kannada, Mangalore as well. Hassan, and in our visits, we had also tried to ensure that we visit both urban and rural spaces that way, and also ensure that we also attend to private institutions as well as government colleges where the issues were happening. The the important aspect that we found was even in such case of distress and sudden issues being brought to the forefront, right? The students in many cases did not know who is the authority that they must be speaking with. The educational machinery itself is so complex um, uh, across in India that the principals get involved, the college managements are involved, the college development councils are involved, DC is involved, the police is involved, VCs are involved. So whom do they speak to was also one such. I wanted to add it up to the previous question that way. And the other part, magnitude, we don't have numbers as such, in the sense that we have had some reports here and there coming from various districts stating that a few number of students weren't allowed to attend the classes, a few students weren't allowed to attend their exams. Despite all such reportings, there's no numbers, and it's upon the state to actually look at what is the impact. Maybe as a civil society group, we can only alert the state machinery that this has been the impact of what has been happening around. But it actually lies with the government machinery to understand what has been its impact. And there are some, we have heard from the students and also administrators from colleges that there have been attempts to do that, in the sense that there are collecting data about the number of students who have missed out on classes, who have missed out on on their examinations, but they're not revealed publicly, which is also raising concerns about why was it collected at the very first place. Was it to aid the students in any way, or was it to target and vilify the students as such? So that's.
So I just wanted to add to this that the flow of information from top to bottom has also been extremely opaque. This High Court order that has come in has been used as a weapon across the state to sort of honestly increase hate against Muslim women, young Muslim students. Because when we asked principals, when we asked deputy commissioner, when we asked high people in higher positions who should have answers, because they so-called implemented the high court order, what they said was there were no written orders from the top. There was a video conference. There was a video conference in which principals were instructed to stop allowing young Muslim women who are wearing hijab, stop allowing their entry under no, I mean, this is unconditional ban was put in place, no matter whether it's a PU college, no matter it's a private college, no matter if it's a degree college. No, even the High Court order itself was being abused this way, because the High Court order has a limited scope. It does not apply equally everywhere. Now, this was the case that, I mean, this was the main answer that we got, saying how did the ban come into place and what was the protocol. When it comes to numbers, whenever we went and met government officials for the PU board and high school, higher education. So when we went and met these two officials in different districts, both of them had a similar reaction when we brought up the word hijab. There was a stiffening, there was a silence in the room, and all they could tell us was, we don't know anything. You can go and ask the higher authorities. Even the deputy commissioner said, go and ask the commissioner. So there was absolutely, it was complete opaqueness. There was absolutely no answers when it came to number of dropouts, how many students have been impacted in any way. Are you doing any survey? How many students are shifting from public institutions and co-educational institutions to minority education, minority run or minority trust run education? These are trends that we have seen on the ground in 4-5 days. Why aren't you? So these questions were left unanswered.
And as far as the High Court order is concerned, if we can just, for our viewers also highlight that in terms of the scope of the High Court order and what is actually happening on the ground.
Just I'll come to the question on the High Court. I just want to add something to what both Aishwarya and Shashank were saying. In terms of the response of the bureaucracy, the broad pattern was that in the last 2-3 years, we've seen that COVID has had a huge impact on education across the country. And there has been a fall in learning levels, and in terms of, the digital divide, there have been a lot of issues that the education sector in general has been facing. And even during those times, perhaps we've not seen the kind of proactive education department that we've seen over the last 8 or 9 months, where here, if you saw the way the hijab issue was handled by the education department, it was like an all-round concerted attack on Muslim women in educational spaces, both in schools and colleges, where the education department was actively issuing orders to universities and colleges and schools saying, do this, don't let them come in, it's not allowed in the premises, it's not allowed in the classroom, so on and so forth. And at the same time, in many senses, the silence of the education department, despite flagrant violation of child rights, etc., with the police entering school college campuses, with the media entering school college campuses, it was almost like, the education department was very covertly supporting these, these actions by the police and the media, because we've clearly not seen any kind of strong response coming from their end. So we've not seen a more proactive education department, even when there was an actual educational crisis that the country was faced with, which suddenly they've sprung into action when the hijab issues come out. The other two things is that even when we went to, like Aishwarya was pointing out, to higher authorities like the deputy commissioner, DC, etc., the standard response was as if to suggest that their office is no more than a post office. So somebody will come and post the High Court order at their office, and their job is to deliver it to the universities, right? And they understand their role also in such a situation in a very limited manner. And it was really frustrating to see that they had nothing beyond this to offer in terms of responses. They said, oh, the High Court has said this, so we told it to the universities and our job there is done. And that's not what these intermediary officials are supposed to be doing. That's not the scope of their job. And I don't know if it was a deliberate misunderstanding of what their role is meant to be, or it was just convenient to take this role and play it. And finally, even when we spoke to police authorities and said, what is the general relationship between different communities in your district, etc., it was very interesting to note the way they responded to this question. They would say, everything is peaceful. So how do you say it's peaceful? Because the Muslims have not protested. So everything is defined by what the Muslim community is doing, what they are not doing, especially when at the time of our visits, Nupur Sharma and her statements in the media were making the news. So they would always tell us, so we have a thriving Muslim population in our district, but nobody's hit the streets after Nupur Sharma has made these statements. Hence, everything is peaceful. So peace is always on the onus of the Muslim community. Do you want to maintain peace? Then you don't speak. If you speak, there will be violence and you will bear the cross for it. Right? That's the general pattern we've seen in the limited number of districts that we've actually visited. Now, coming to the High Court order, the High Court order is actually very clear on where the hijab restriction applies and where it doesn't. It applies in all government colleges, one, and in places where the CDC has not said anything about the hijab, then the girls are free to wear it. And where the CDC has specifically said that this garment is not allowed as part of the uniform, then the women are not going to be allowed to wear it. And even then, when the CDC order restricting the hijab exists, it's not a blanket restriction. So you will only be prevented from wearing it within classroom spaces, and you will be able to wear it in the premises of the college, right? And when it comes to private universities, they are free to allow their students to wear the hijab, again subject to what the CDC is saying. And definitely it's not applicable in degree colleges. Right, that's very clear from the order. But in our visits, we have seen that in a lot of degree colleges, the hijab restriction has been enforced in full force, and any question that the students raise or the parents raise, etc., they are countered by saying, do you know the law? Do we know the law? Right? So there is the High Court order just makes these different categories, so on and so forth. That in itself, many people are questioning, and rightfully so. But even with what the High Court order allows and does not allow, nobody is actually paying attention to it. If the college has made up its mind to restrict the hijab, they just restrict it. And the High Court order has become like a weapon in the hands of a highly communalized society to go after young Muslim women.
Now, one final question to all of you in terms of the fact that it is being heard in the Supreme Court as well now, the matter. And in terms of the way ahead, like what are the demands that are being raised? What is it that is being legally raised in terms of Karnataka, as well as in terms of when we look at the larger issue which is now in the Supreme Court? So what are the big takeaways that our viewers should understand from this, and in terms of the impact of your study as well, and in terms of the findings of your research? So if we were to put it in a larger context for our viewers and try to explain to them the bigger debate which is happening.
I'll add on if you miss out anything.
I mean, legally, I don't want to really comment anything at the moment as a member of the study, because the matter is sub judice and counsels are leading their case. I don't want to say anything about it. But in terms of what and how this study should be understood, one very important thing is that we have not made enough effort as civil society to understand the impact, even the gravity of it, because just going to 3 districts has given us so many insights that just reading through the newspapers has not given us. And in each district, the issue takes a different flavor. Although it's largely the restriction on the hijab, in each district, there is a certain nuance and there is a different struggle that these girls are facing. And if we don't stand by these girls at this point, we will completely fail them as civil society. And so for us to be even able able to make that step towards fighting on their behalf, or fighting with them, not on their behalf, fighting with them, standing by them, we need to understand the gravity of it. And the other thing also is that I don't know if this relates to your question. The other point I definitely wanted to make is that what Aishwarya began with, that so far all the studies and all the data collection and all the analysis of what impact this has had has mostly been led by Muslim organizations. And that again is a failure of civil society, because this is not only a Muslim issue that they have to stand at the fore and fight. This is each one of our issue, and that is one of the primary takeaways for us, at least from this study, that we need to be able to stand up for the Muslim women, because it's also a women's issue largely. Yeah.
You asked about way forward, so I just wanted to respond to that. What has happened now is we have gone a long way backward. And when we spoke to Muslim students in the districts, there are two main insights that I'd like to highlight. One thing is the role of education in their lives, in their communities. What does education mean in their communities? Some Muslim women say, what does education mean in your community? It means the same in our community. Some Muslim women say that because we are privileged, okay, let them not allow me with my hijab over here, I can shift to another institution. But most Muslim women also said that we are the second generation who's studying, or we're the first generation who's studying. If you take me out, then my entire family, we are going to see one step back. And it's actually a way backward that we're seeing. A lot of Muslim women articulated this as a role of education, that this is a way forward. From the fact that I'm in college is a way forward for my family. One more woman being educated is a way forward for my family. And these might sound like cliches, but you need to understand these are young girls who have dropped out, who are speaking with utmost clarity, utmost sharpness, and saying that this is what this means for me. Second thing is the role of, while I'm saying right to, I mean, what does education mean here? Second insight is I wanted to also throw some light on how we should be looking at this as not just distress, as not just psychological distress, but a complete change in perspective. There are young Muslim women who told us that just yesterday, just before this issue started, we were not just high ranking, we were students that the teachers looked up at and said, oh, such traditional girls. They follow their customs. They are, they sort of, they're doing what their community stands for. They're standing up for their traditions, and they're well dressed and modest and this and that, the words thrown at girls, and in a positive light. Suddenly young girls are saying, suddenly I'm a criminal, suddenly I'm a terrorist. And these are things, these are feelings, these are emotions that they are not able to process, because they have not understood. We are not there to explain to them. So they have not understood this kind of sudden shift that has happened, and that shock that has happened with this change in perspective, that from girls who are having fun with other students, girls who are social, girls who are participating in co-curricular activities, girls who led normal lives, so suddenly overnight were treated as criminals, treated as terrorists. So this change in perspective is the root of that kind of psychological distress that I was talking to you about. And of course, the tangible impact that we have to demand from the government is how many people have dropped out, what is the rate of increase or decrease in public institution admissions, how many people have gotten admitted in minority run institutions. We need to know these numbers, because the pandemic has also happened. We need to, like Purna said, this is an educational crisis. So these are the two insights that I'll never forget. These words, such young girls, about 17, 18-year-olds, speaking with that level of clarity, and before every interview, before every conversation gets over, they would comfort us, saying, we will, somehow the court will stand for us, we will get justice. This is something simple, you be strong, you don't worry. they're comforting us at the end of conversations. And I'm not trying to romanticize anything. I'm just trying to say that these are these are full human beings who are affected. They are not numbers. They are not a religion. They are they're wholesome women, young women who are affected at the very core. From mothers, parents, teachers, or many Muslim women have been affected.
One of the major things that we wanted to try and do with the study is that place right to education as the major sense with which we understand the whole issue. Um, uh, Suddenly, the world and the debate around hijab changes if at all we place a right to education as the core component, and that opens up a lot of spaces for a lot of.
Just to add on to what Aishwarya was saying, the change in perspective has not just been for the girls in terms of how the teachers and the management is seeing them. One very, very insightful, extremely moving conversation that we had in one of the districts was when we were talking to the girls and the conversation was coming to a close. In the end, they said, they're disillusioned about education itself. In that the person we were talking to, she said, I might just give up my education because I don't know what is the point of studying in a country and getting multiple degrees in a country where I can't make the simple choice of choosing whether or not I want to cover my head. What am I going to do with that education? How is it going to help me? And how will I survive in a society like this that's going to divest me of my most fundamental rights, right? So that sense of what am I even going to do? How am I even going to survive? We are all responsible for putting these young women in such a precarious situation. And despite all this, like Aishwarya said, they came out with courage that really belies their age. And it's extremely unfair that they are being made to be so courageous and to be so strong. Nobody should be expecting the young or the old of any countries to be showing this amount of courage and fortitude, and that kind of disillusionment that they felt with education and the world in general is something extremely disturbing.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.